had to get rid of everything and I had nothing. And I have to tell you, it was freeing. We shouldn't be attached to things, and that's emotional, that's whatever. We can survive. It's your mindset. We owe it to ourselves I always call it living an artist's life, right? We don't have to live the same day every day.
Comments like that have always inspired me to be stubborn and rebellious and do exactly what maybe somebody has said that they don't want me to pursue.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the case may be in your part of the world. Welcome to the Emerging Artist Podcast. This is going to be part 2 of our conversation with Tracy Gurdian from Tovari Designs. In part 1 of our conversation, we were talking to Tracy about being proximal. In other words, if you want to find success, you have to put yourself in a position where that's possible. And we also got into a brief discussion about whether or not you really needed to be in a gallery to be successful. And of course, the answer is no. No, you don't. You don't need to be in a gallery. Let's pick up the conversation right where we left off.
I just don't know about the confidence in galleries. I just don't know. I would never put all of my art in one place. Let's just say that.
Smart to be diversified. Right.
Okay. It's like your money. Would you put all of your money in one place?
No.
No. Why put all of your art in one place? I see nothing wrong in putting a piece or two in a gallery, right? Why not?
Yeah.
The other thing that's really good about it is if you have a piece or two in a gallery, they will link up to your site. So
Right.
Even though your other pieces are not in their gallery, they will still try to sell them for you. So let's just say that somebody comes in, they see your artwork, and they're like, oh, that's interesting. They then try to promote your other work that's not in their gallery.
Yeah. I think from that standpoint, if you view it as a strategic goal to get your work into a gallery, you can leverage that to then grow and expand your online sales. And I think if you look at it that way, that's a very worthy goal to try to do that. But like you said earlier, it's not something that you need to do to validate yourself as an artist.
You don't need to be validated by that at all.
And I wanted to go back because you said near the beginning of our conversation, you said that you had this thought when you were younger that if I just got into a gallery, I'd be happy. Right?
Yeah.
Could you talk about, has that view changed? How did it change?
Do you know what actually I think made me the happiest when I think back on it? I had this client who unfortunately is no longer living. And he was this unbelievable man, and he just loved art. And I met him through a friend. He had this gorgeous house, and in Naples, we have this neighborhood called Port Royal, and it's probably the wealthiest neighborhood here in Naples. And he was not the Port Royal type owner. He was from Pittsburgh and just supported artists. And truly, when you meet someone who loves art, it's such a pleasure, because he met me at a party and he said, this is what truly makes me happy. He said, look around. He said, do you think you can create a bunch of pieces for me to go with my home? And I just felt, wow, this is amazing. And so I created all these pieces for his home and made them. And they were unusual pieces. And I continued to be friends with him. He was part of I joined his friend group. He threw these huge parties every year. And every year I would go to his house for these parties, and I'd walk in and I would see my pieces all over his house on the tables here and there. And I'd walk in and I'd go, I can't believe I'm part of his. And it was him. Like it looked like him. Like it looked like something it didn't look staged. Like when people have an interior designer just pick out things for you, something.
Right.
And I love, this is what I like. So, I like that. I like if somebody calls me and I've done, and then like he sold that house and he sold everything in it. And then he bought another house in Port Royal and he's like, can you do this again? I'm like, yes, I'll do this again. And so I like, I've had a lot of clients. I'm very fortunate to they've called me and they're like, can you come over and create some pieces for my home? Wonderful. I feel so honored and privileged if I walk into someone's home and you feel like you're part of someone's environment. I'm like, oh, you feel like a family member. You feel like, oh, they trust me, because you have to know that. You have to get to know the personality. You almost feel like, okay, what do you like? What is your childhood? It's interesting because you want to know everything about them. And you look at their decor and you're just secretly taking everything in. And then you're creating these pieces that you think is their personality. And as an artist, I think you are, hopefully, we're all these sensitive people, because at least I am. I always am exhausted by the end of the day, because I walk outside and I'm like, look at this tree. Oh my God, these leaves on this tree. This is awful to be this way. But you notice everything, right? As an artist. And so when you meet people and you have to create something for them, hopefully you know them. Or the other thing works for me. Have you ever met somebody and you're like, oh, this person, no, I can't. Have you felt like this negative energy? Hopefully if you're creating a painting for somebody or ceramics for a home, I like that you come out of your comfort zone, because you have to realize you shouldn't be creating the things you shouldn't go back to your studio and be like, okay, this is what I always do. No.
Mm-hmm.
Creating something.
You're not creating what you always do. You're creating something that for this person. This isn't about you. Right? So go take your notes and then go alter something that is your style, but it's for this person. Right? So we owe it to ourselves to, I always call it living an artist's life. Right? Where I always feel like I'm living an artist's life. I get to run the beach almost every day if it's not like a hurricane today. Right. And I just take my notes for the day of what things are looking like, and I might get inspired by something every day. And you listen, even if you're not living in Florida, you can get inspired by the smallest things, If you're present and aware, we don't have to live the same day every day. You could really find things, but we have to be present.
Yeah. That's interesting, because I was talking to a local business owner a couple days ago, and they asked me, they're like, Scott, you're so creative. I think it's really, there's no difference really between me and anybody else. I think that artists we just have a better sense of appreciation developed. I think, like you said, you go outside and you're like, that branch, the light is coming through the canopy of the trees and it's hitting that branch, and we notice it. And that's the only difference.
It's weird, right? I walked out of Walmart. I think John and I were shopping and it was dusk. Oh. I paint a lot of pink in my pictures because I live in a glass house, and at dusk, everything's pink. And the sky was like, I walk out and purple, and I was like, I'm like, I go, look at that. And I'm like, my camera, I made him stand in the parking lot for 10 minutes as I took like 500 photos, and he was like underwhelmed. He was like, I'm like, okay, now I have to stand at this angle. Now I have to stand at this angle. I'm like, but look at the color over there. And I'm like, then the blue over there. I'm like, don't you think sometimes, I'm like, I can't even create that color. I'll look at the sky, go, and that pink, I don't even know if I could do that pink. No, it is true. It's true. I don't know. I can't I can't stop being that way. I'm like really into, even when I bake, I'm doing this sourdough thing and I'm making sourdough. And even art transfers into just cooking, and I'm making this sourdough. I'll call my daughter, and now I have her making it now too, where I'll call her every day. I'm like, look at this loaf.
I've seen you post those.
It's getting better and better.
They're works of art. It is. And it's therapeutic too. My sister does sourdough.
It is.
It helps people with the grieving process and everything. It's amazing how that translates over.
It does.
I think if we could maybe just go back real quickly and just talk about the kind of art you do, because I don't know if we really went into that.
We didn't. And I, just looking at your website too, you have a great website.
So they could find me at tovaridesigns.com. Yes. So I do, it's multidimensional. Ceramics and paintings, and I do everything from canvas work to plaster on canvas, where I take foliage from around Southwest Florida, and I use the imprint of the foliage on that's set in plaster on canvas, and then I remove the foliage. So it leaves the imprint on it. And then I use everything from acrylics to graphites to inks and a gold leaf. And I also use these colors from the seed transfers that are left on the canvas to paint. And then I use these little abstract symbols that have meanings like Buddhist and Japanese spiritual meanings behind them. Which is an evolution from my ceramics, because I was doing something similar on my ceramics where I was taking foliage. I did a whole collection for Bergdorf Goodman where I did leaf impressions on my ceramics years ago for them. So I felt like it's an evolution of that collection on canvas. And then my abstracts that I'm doing is similar to, I was doing this type of painting just on ceramics, and I was painting, I want to say 30 years ago.
Okay.
So it's kind of back to what I was doing.
I wrote it down because I thought it was such a good comment that you made in your website. You said, I believe that working in a single medium is restrictive to my artistic process. And Scott and I previously have talked on another podcast about how I know when I first started doing abstract, I already had my career going as a faux artist. And so I had a lot of varying comments, especially from designers about not wanting me to become an abstract artist because they wanted me basically to stay in my own lane and not deviate from that.
It's so strange to me, because if you look at our masters, they are multidisciplinary. Okay. Picasso did ceramics, did paintings. Most of our masters are multidisciplinary 3D, sculptures, both, and they all evolved. Even if you look at Salvador Dali, his work, he changed so much. Study and evolve anymore. Learn and grow. To think that way is just very, I'm going to say, small-minded. You have to grow as an artist, and to be really great, you have to evolve. And I just would say to those people, give them what they would like and move on with your other work, because they're missing out. Stop. If they tell you that, don't stop progressing.
Oh, right.
Even though you're an artist doesn't mean that you're stopping on continue to grow. We all have to continue.
Yeah.
once you get comfortable, I don't think being comfortable is a really great place to be. I don't ever feel accomplished. I don't ever feel successful. My prior life was a dancer. I don't think we got to that, but that was my first career. I was a dancer.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was injured, which brought me into ceramics. I feel like being a dancer taught me to never give up because it's full of rejection and it's full of discipline. In order to be a dancer, it's just so disciplined. And as an artist, you really have to be disciplined. And dance is full of rejection and you don't really care. Just make you better.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like you do have to continue to evolve.
Definitely.
And when I look at my work in particular, I feel like I see my ceramics in my paintings. When I look at what I was painting on my ceramics, I see it on my canvases. It makes your work better. You can't think out of the thing, be unique. Unique, I think, is much more pleasing. I just like to make people feel uncomfortable. I want somebody to look at my work. I don't want somebody to look at my work. It's so pretty.
That's funny.
So
I think you just have to remember that when other people give you advice like stay in your lane or stick, that comes from their own sense of insecurity and they're projecting that on you. It's just important to be able, as an artist, to identify those types of things coming through the communication that other people give you.
they sold something of yours that sold.
Exactly.
And they know that sold. And they're scared of the unknown. If you create this other thing, if that's going to sell.
Yeah, that's right. They feel some kind of insecurity.
What's really interesting is I had a gallery and they said, we just want your floral plaster pieces. We just aren't interested in any of your abstracts because that's all they've sold. And I was just in a magazine and the magazine was just going to do the florals. And then I was really surprised that they printed also the abstracts. And I was like, that was really nice of them to include my abstracts as well. They're versed abstracts and florals. I feel like I do get a little insulted when somebody looks at my work and they think, I just want this part of your work.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't really let it define me.
No, for me, comments like that have always inspired me to be stubborn and rebellious and do exactly what maybe somebody has said that they don't want me to pursue.
Frustrating, though.
It can be because it comes across as a lack of support.
It does come across that way.
But yeah, that's where finding your own tribe of good support is so important. And I was thinking,
that's a good point. Finding your own tribe of support.
An artist that, for instance, like you and I in this community, and some artists are supportive of each other and others are not. They see each other as competition instead, which is interesting.
Yeah.
You do very different thing. I have never done pottery. I would love to do pottery, but that's something actually that I have in my head that I want to do as just a personal thing, to just be my own special thing to create, and just like my own diary and journal and sketching. It's my own. I don't want to try to produce pottery as another form of making money in my art career. But I appreciate that about your work is so incredible and so different.
I do wish there was more support. I don't know why people find it as competition. I think I'm in Europe a lot and it's not that way. There are artists there and a big community.
Yeah. We do see, it's not just in the world of art. The sense of competition is something that we are taught, like, in our society.
I think.
And it's a form of control. I mean, trying to establish other people outside of you as some kind of force that's trying to take away what you have is a way to manipulate you. And it's not true that other people are always trying. Sure, there are people that don't have your best interests at heart, but at large, the world is working for us, not against us. It's as long as you're able to, as an artist, isolate yourself from that negativity and just remember that the more you produce authentically, the more benefits you're going to gain from that. And it is unfortunate that kind of mentality still sticks around, but I do feel like there's a change. I do feel like there's more positivity that's been introduced into our culture in the last few decades.
Yeah.
I do feel like that tide is turning. More people are coming to understand that there's not so much competition out there as there is just a larger community.
You just said producing authentically. Do you think that's hard to do these days? Do you feel like there's a percentage that you have to produce, like to sell, and then the percentage of that you produce that you just feel creative and you want to produce this, but it might not sell?
That's a great question.
But is it just something that you enjoy and you keep it yourself and you hang it in your home yourself?
Well, who has the money to be producing all this work to be just hanging in your home, right? It's like what's authentic and what's like produced for.
Yeah, I think the sweet spots where those things converge,
right.
Though. Like you do have to have an understanding of what the marketplace is desiring, but you have to bring yourself to that place and what you can add to it and bring to it and the unique perspective that you can inject into it. It is a balancing act.
It's a balancing act. I think when we were talking about galleries, and I think then one negative, like the one thing that I don't appreciate is when they say, we don't sell these colors, don't do these colors because we don't sell these colors. You know, I don't know if I can make those sacrifices.
Because you probably don't feel like you are being authentic to yourself.
Actually,
there were specific colors
yes.
that you had that were commissioned.
Right.
And the piece was absolutely beautiful, but it wasn't what maybe the color choices you would have used. Yeah. And I think that kind of just goes with the territory. We all do some things as artists that can we be happy with the fact that we produce something that somebody else loves and find that contentment in that and realize this isn't, like you've said before, it's not about me.
Right.
This is about my client who commissioned this piece, and we find enjoyment just solely in that. Whereas something made separately where we're just excited, like you talking about seeing an amazing dusk and sunset and taking those photos and being inspired and creating. And then who knows if you'll sell that piece or you may have it for 25 years hanging on your wall.
Right.
But being content and having those moments where you just, maybe there's a piece so you just keep for yourself that you don't ever end up selling. So are you that way with photography? I know we haven't mentioned also, besides the videography and everything else that he does, he also is inspired greatly by nature and does amazing photography as well. Travels all over the world, spends very long, patiently waiting hours looking at birds and all sorts of...
Yeah, nature photography is very different in the sense that you have to be able to have that appreciation and find a spot that you're like, ooh, that's going to just be a perfect photograph.
What is your Instagram?
Reinvent Studio.
Invent Studio?
Yeah. Scott Markowitz Photography. Our social media is, that's a topic for a different show, right?
Awful.
Yeah, I guess you can't be awful if you're not going to be showing up.
No, the last few weeks I've been blown away at the social media.
Well, we can thank my business partner Hector Pichardo for that. Amazing,
wonderful
social media maestro.
Wonderful job.
But yeah, it is the case that for photography, you're even more beholden to what the client wants.
Yes.
For me, the nature photography is a perfect outlet for that, because if I spend a whole week creating portraiture or product photography for a client according to their specifications, you know, I'm able to say, okay, Saturday morning's for me. I'm going to go do what I want and create some imagery that I find fulfilling for me. And so I can balance things out that way. But yeah, it's a constant struggle to make sure that your personal artistic voice is part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
A responsibility of the artist to have that dialogue with their client to say, okay, I'm hearing what you want, and this is my interpretation of that.
Right.
Right. Like, how important is that in your process to have
Definitely.
that conversation?
It's funny because I have this argument with John, my partner, and he's a number computer guy. He gives me percentages. His response to my emotional reaction is 70% of your work is going to be what you got to do, and 30% is going to be what you like to make. And I'm like, what? I'm like, numbers. How about change those? He's trying to convince me that I have to produce. My vision is producing less of what I think I should be. My crazy mind that is untamed, is probably not. I have a minor in business, I should probably add. And so the minor in business that I have does take over and calms me down a bit and says, listen here, you have to be rational. And this will be the test, because I just created a diptych that's being dropped off at the gallery, and it's my most sane piece yet. Sane meaning that it is all tones of white.
Mm.
It is 2 panels, 48 by 60, and they have been wanting like this white pieces. I had these 2 white pieces that are hanging in my home forever, that they saw, and I just would never give it to them because I just didn't feel like, I don't know, to me, it wasn't transportable to me. Okay. And so the gallery had wanted them for a long time, and I'm like, oh, someday I'll create some for you. And then I also never thought, if I want to do all white for gallery purposes. But then I was like, this could be interesting. So I was just on my crazy, psychotic, we all go in these moods, and created 2 diptychs that were I put so much texture, and the relief came out really great. Texture and 3D relief in it.
Amazing.
I was really happy with it. So that white sells. It does sell. Okay. Have I yet delivered a piece that's white? No. Today, it's being delivered. We'll see how it goes. We'll see. I typically have pieces dropped off that are already framed.
Yes, that is more sellable.
The discussion I had with the galleries, they said, do not frame these. Okay. Now, 2 things. One is they said, first of all, the diptychs don't look good if they're framed. Other one was, sometimes people like to pick out their frames, and it's harder to sell it. So these are not framed. So they're all white. It's a diptych, and I've done research on it, and it does say that, like in galleries, it's not as common to have them already framed. So that's another topic of discussion, is how many of you in high-end galleries are framing your work. And they sometimes have to ship these paintings, so it's harder to ship it if it's already framed.
Yes, it is.
So,
yeah.
But white, sellable. I don't typically do it, but
Blues and green.
Blues are really big sellers. Anything that has a lot of blue in it.
Yeah, I think those colors will remain that way
They
in
will
a tropical environment.
You do have to. A percentage of your work should be if colors that we do know are bankable.
That makes sense. But no, go ahead.
Oh, so if you could go back in time to yourself as you were changing from your dance career, what advice would you give yourself at that age, going back 26 years ago? about what you know now as an artist, what would you tell yourself?
I would not be so bitter.
I wasn't expecting.
I was so angry. I think sometimes that we react to situations that happen to us. We tend to overreact to things, or we hold on to things in the past and we carry them into the future. And that's not a good way to live our life. We should accept things that happen and think to ourselves, this has happened. Okay, this has happened. There's really nothing we can do about it. When you really think of situations when they happen to us, there's not anything we could do about it because it's happened.
Right.
Okay? Realistically, it's happened. So I injured my back. We have more control over our lives than we think we have. And I didn't really realize that at the time. I always felt like I had to succumb to things or accept things or be this victim of things. And I don't ever really feel like a victim anymore of anything. I think that I don't feel hurt by anything in my past. I only feel like it makes me stronger. So I wouldn't change anything.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't change anything. And I would tell myself in the past that you're just going to be okay. Don't be so angry. Don't be so angry. Just something good is going to happen, and everything is happening there's a path that we don't know why. There's a path that we don't know why. So now I get like really introspective, like something might happen to me. One of the hurricanes, I don't remember which hurricane it was, but my house flooded. There you go.
Yeah.
And I just was like, I had to get rid of everything. I used to think that I needed things, and then I had to get rid of everything, and I had nothing. And I have to tell you, it was freeing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I had everything in storage. I had to move, and we went from this huge house to this tiny little thing for a year. You don't really need the things you think you need. We shouldn't be attached to things. And that's emotional. That's whatever. We can survive. It's your mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So I would go back and tell myself, everything happens, and then you just keep moving forward. So I would say, keep moving forward. And that's what I tell myself every day. Something happens, and I say, keep moving forward, because certainly it's happened, and we're not going to just keep living in the past.
Tracy, I love that.
Yeah. I'm impressed that you're here today because of our hurricane situation with Helena.
I think that we should all help each other out. Anybody that has like struggles, and hey, just have a good cry.
Yeah.
And move
Sometimes
on.
that feels really wonderful, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And have somebody to recognize that you're going through something.
Oh, yeah.
Just that very simple thing of just having somebody just know that you're going through something and give you some tenderness in that moment.
Yes.
Is very important.
Yeah.
We thank you very much for being here, Tracy.
It's a pleasure.
And would you please let everybody know just one more time and spell out the name of your website?
Yes,
so they can
it's
spell.
Tovari, designs with an S.com. Instagram, it's Tovari_designs.
Perfect.
And you have so much content on Instagram. I think you have 3,000
Yeah, you can see me.
pictures of your work, which is wonderful, and videos.
Awesome.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.